Hello, everyone. It's Independent Conservative. Thank you all for joining me once again. So, A-lister actor Denzel Washington, which I did a video on him about a week or so ago in reference to him doing the gay kiss. You know what I mean? Yeah. Well, apparently recently he said that I think it was in an interview or a award show where he stated that we're being manipulated by both sides of the aisle. What he meant by that is he's talking about the left and the right. That we're being manipulated. Now, my question is that true? I believe it's true to some extent, just some extent, but not completely. Let's get right into this article and hear what he has to say. And I kind of was skeptical about hearing him say anything about this because for the simple fact that I'm like, okay, man, well, you're saying this after you did this, kiss. Maybe this is some kind of way in which you can get more views for your movie. I think different about him now. But anyway, Washington spoke out about politics in the U.S. during an interview with the Sunday Times last weekend about his role in upcoming film Gladiator 2. But when the paper's reporter tried to tie the film into U.S. politics in the wake of the 2024 election, they always do that. They always do this every single freaking time. Washington was not really all that impressed by the question. Yeah. Quote, it's so easy to stand outside America and say this and that, Washington responded in an interview with the Sunday Times. Turn around, pick a country, any one. Okay, let's hear what he has to say. It's all politics, all promises unkept. And now with the information age the way it is, if anything, left, right, whatever, had better learn how to use those tools to manipulate the people. Let me read that again. It's all politics, all promises unkept. And now with the information age the way it is, if anything, left, right, whatever, had better learn how to use those tools to manipulate the people. There was a great line in the first movie I did, 1981's Carbon Copy. I didn't know anything about that. Quote, power to the people. Yeah, they had it once. It was called the Stone Age, the star continued. I'm going to get into that. I'm going to get into this whole idea of manipulation here. We're all slaves to information now, he says. We really are. We're all slaves. So whatever you feel about the leaders, like this guy's crazy or the other one is saying, you'd better realize you're being manipulated by both sides, period, Washington has claimed. And do I believe that there's manipulation on both sides? Yes, I do. But when I say I believe that there's manipulation on both sides, I mean that in reference to the mainstream media outlets, the mainstream culprits, CNN, MSNBC's, ABC, CBS, and then you have Fox News, which is kind of like they're more conservative than the others, but they're kind of edging over into leftist territory. Basically, Fox News is trying to be more balanced, but they're more conservative than the others. But whatever the case is, they're manipulative as well, okay? They're manipulative, and I agree with him on that part of us being manipulated, but I believe we're being more manipulated by the mainstream media left and right paradigms than we are anything outside of that, okay? And I'm going to get into that in detail. Let's see what else he has to say. Hear what else he has to say. He ended the discussion by saying, quote, yeah, so go to the movies. Of course, because you want them to go see your movies, which I think is getting a lot of critical acclaim for. But anyway, he also admitted that he had been in some bad films, but he insisted that there are 3 phases of life in Hollywood for those lucky enough to have the longevity to realize it. Well, in life, you learn, earn, and then you return, as in give back, he explained. So if your life is 90 years long, up until 30, you learn, and from 30 to 60, you earn. So in that era, I was earning. With a great agent, my career built into making money, and so the earned kicked in, and then life also kicked in with bills, 4 kids, and a house. He's a pretty intelligent man. The 69-year-old Washington has never been a down-the-line leftist and has often distinguished himself from the usual left-wing Hollywood political narrative, and that is true. In January of 2022, for instance, he scolded Hollywood liberals for using racial issues like a weapon and said, quote, diversity shouldn't be mentioned like it's something special, end quote. He has also often praised God and injected religious ideals into his work and his personal outlook on life. Indeed, in 2021, he went wholesale against the left's anti-cop movement and insisted that he does not care for people who put down the police and the soldiers who sacrifice their lives so we have the freedom to complain. End of article. Yeah. And there were some good points there he said, and that, according to that article, some good points he said there. It states that he's not a down the line leftist, and I don't think the times I've heard Denzel Washington speaking in terms of politics or anything that had to do with morality, he tended to always side more with conservative views and values. Many of the views and values of the left is not traditional concepts of right and wrong, for the most part. Okay, they have their own interpretation of what is right and what is wrong. More of their concepts of right and wrong has to do with moral relativism, but that's another story. I ain't going to go into the detail of that. But I just want to talk a little bit about his idea that we're being manipulated by both sides, as I said earlier, and I'm going to embellish on that. The idea that we're being manipulated by both the left and the right. To some extent, I agree. But only in reference to the mainstream media outlets, okay? And what I mean by that, let me explain what I mean by that. We're being manipulated by both because there's a lot of stuff that both the left and the right, in terms of the mainstream media, does not share. Okay, how often do you hear the mainstream media, or on the left or the right, okay, talk about the Federal Reserve and the hell they put us in terms of nobody talks about that on the left or the right. Nobody talks about it. They talk about the economy and we in debt and all of this and inflation, woo, but nobody talks about the Federal Reserve and the fact that since the Federal Reserve was made into law in 1913, inflation went up, all these negative things began to happen with the financial situation in America ever since the Federal Reserve was put into law in 1913. And signed into law in 1913 by President Woodrow Wilson, I believe. Nobody said anything about that because it's interesting, because prior to 1913, America was more prosperous than it ever was. But once, financially and economically rather, but once the Federal Reserve was put into place, things changed. When we gave the control of our money over to a group of independent private bankers, they had nothing to do with America, but controls America through the financial system. Things changed. It changed. And I'm not going to go into the detail of it here because this video might get taken down. But the point is, we are being manipulated to a large extent on both the left and the right when it comes to the mainstream media, because they don't mention these kind of things, do they? The mainstream media also doesn't mention a lot about the XEX trafficking stuff. They don't mention that a lot, whether it's on the left or right. Some conservatives, I think Fox News may have mentioned some of it, but not really that much. They don't. So could we argue that both sides are manipulating us on that point? They are. They're manipulating us with that type of stuff, the trafficking. They're manipulating us with Federal Reserve. Yeah, you could say that we're being manipulated on both sides. That's why I always suggest that you go outside the mainstream media. If you really want to find real truth and real facts, then you have to go outside the mainstream media, whether it's from the left or the right, because oftentimes it's not what they say, it's what they don't say. And then when you flip it around, a lot of times it's what they say. It's not what they say, rather, but how they say it and how they spin it. When they say it, you got to listen to how they're saying it, the way they're spinning it. When it comes to law enforcement, how does the left tend to spin a police officer, especially if he's a white police officer, shooting and killing a so-called unarmed black person? They spin it as if the white police officer shot the black person, unarmed black person, because they were black. That's how it's almost always spun. I guarantee you guys that are listening to this, I'm telling the truth. That's how it's always spun. But the problem with that is that that's misleading and deceptive. Because what that does is it puts in the minds of people all over the country, especially black folks, this idea that white police officers are out here arbitrarily shooting up black people simply because they're black. That is totally not true. Now, are there some white racist cops out there? I'm pretty sure it is, obviously. I mean, come on, man. But then there are some black ones too. I've seen black. I'm not gonna go into the detail of that, man, because it ain't worth wasting my time. I'm just gonna simply say this: that we're being manipulated when it comes to that idea. Okay, and that's mostly from the left. Okay, but sometimes the right does it too. But remember, I'm talking about the mainstream media, and most people, unfortunately, don't go outside the mainstream media. And let me end the video on this. I believe, in my personal opinion, that one of the reasons why Trump won this time around wasn't just merely because of economics and the illegals and so forth and all of this. It wasn't just that, and people were dealing with it. It was that, but it was also that a lot of people started watching news sources outside the mainstream media. They started watching people like Anthony Brown Logan and Brandon T. Tatum and Jericho Green and all of these major conservative news sources. I believe personally, they started watching them and listening to them. And it's a ton of conservative news sources out there that are outside the mainstream conservative outlet. There's a ton of them out there. They have a lot of viewers, that have a lot of clout. I mean, you look at podcaster Joe Rogan. Now, he's not conservative. He leans more to the left, or you can argue he's more centrist. He's more in the middle, but he tends to be a little bit more leftist than anything. But Joe Rogan is a sensible man. He has common sense. On either side, he has common sense, and I respect that. And here's the deal. When he had Trump on for 3 hours, I think someone was saying something along the line that within the first day or two, or whatever, when the first hour, not day, but hour, he had 30-something million views. Are you kidding me? That's insane. Or at least it ended in 30-something. I know it was in the millions and millions of views that particular podcast with Trump for 3 hours garnered. So that gave Americans an opportunity from both sides to hear Trump and everything he had to say for 3 hours straight. Just hear his political stance and other things. This gave them an opportunity. Clearly, that pulled viewers away from the mainstream media, particularly the left, because people were starting to see more of a different side than what the mainstream media was painting of Trump. And this opened a lot, in my opinion, opened a lot of Americans' eyes to what Trump really stood for. But in order for them to know this, they had to watch something outside the mainstream media. And I'm pretty sure that a vast majority of those people that watched the Joe Rogan podcast with Trump weren't conservatives. I'm pretty sure it was Democrats and liberals or people in the middle. I'm pretty sure it was a mixture of all of that. So I think that, when you go outside the mainstream media and start getting informed, your eyes are going to be open to a lot of different things. So that's how you prevent from getting manipulated. But yes, to an extent, I agree with what Denzel Washington is saying, but only in reference to the mainstream media. Okay. Now, does that mean we can be manipulated by people outside the mainstream media? Of course we can. Of course we can. But that comes from just listening to other YouTube channels, podcasters, and so forth, and then comparing them to others and seeing if you're being manipulated and twisted. Okay, but you can't make that assessment based off of something somebody say off of CNN or MSNBC. We can't be concerned with baseless conspiracy theories, and then you just run with it. Oh, this reporter said this on CNN, so I'm not going to look at any other alternative news sources. That's ignorant and asinine. As if they're God or something. Really? I mean, you might want to just go ahead and go outside what they say, because what they say is not law. What these reporters and journalists say on the mainstream news, whether it's on the left or right, is not law. You need to go outside of that in order to see, okay? Go outside the matrix that's been created for us in order to see and hear what someone else has to say, because maybe, just maybe, they might be right. I'm just saying. Yeah, so that's what I had to say about that. I agree in part with what Denzel Washington is saying, but not completely. Ended the video on this, only in the area, for the most part, of the mainstream media that we're being manipulated on both sides, both the left and the right. So yeah, that's what I had to say about it. What do you guys think about what Denzel Washington said? Leave your comments in the comment section below. Like my video, share my video, and subscribe. God bless you all, and see you again.